the tank which Germany prioritized to take out. The M4 Firefly. This was one of the most dangerous Allied tanks fielded during World War II. And the M4 Firefly is also one of the most beloved tanks of World War II. And for good reason, because this tank helped to speed up the war in Europe. This is also a very deadly and effective tank, and today we'll talk about this vehicle. But before we get into this, I'd like to take a second of your time to remind you that we have our own Discord server with a couple of tank enthusiasts where you can go talk to them, share your knowledge with us and learn yourself more as well in the process. Anyway, now let's get right into the video. Even though the 75mm was sufficient against the Japanese and Italian tanks, it started to struggle against the newly introduced German heavy and medium tanks. So the idea of putting a 17-pounder on a Sherman came up, but it was opposed by the Ministry of Supply. It finally happened largely due to the efforts and perseverance of two officers. British Major George Brighty with the help of Lieutenant Colonel Witheridge. Despite the reports and refusals, they managed to pursue the project by themselves and eventually got their concept accepted. Massive delays also began to appear in the development of the official projects which were meant to mount the new gun. After they ran into some more problems, they received a note from the Department of Tank Design to cease their efforts. However, thanks to Witheridge his connections, they eventually convinced the head of the Royal Armed Corps. They then won over the Director General of Weapon and Instruments Production and the Ministry of Supply, who ultimately gave them the full support, funding and official approval. In early 1944, before the new delays of the Challenger and the inability of the Cromwell turret ring to receive the new 17-pounder became known, the program was eventually given the highest priority by Winston Churchill himself in preparation for D-Day. The 17-pounder what I previously talked about is one of the most dangerous anti-tank guns which was available for Britain at the time. This was more than a match to knock out the famous Tiger I tank from the front. The design for this gun started back in 1941 and it came into production back in 1942. This main armament had a penetration power of 208mm to 120mm at a range of 1000 meters. The QF 6-pounder was found inadequate by 1943, so they wanted a different and stronger gun. However, the 17-pounder was long and heavy. It therefore needed much rework and compromise to have it installed in the turret. By 1944 the Archer used it, as well as the M10 Wolverine, the Challenger and later the Comet. Ken Tao summed up his impressions about the Firefly. I quote, "The Firefly tank is an ordinary Sherman, but, in order to accommodate the immense breech of the 17-pounder and to store its massive shells, the co-driver has been eliminated and his little den has been used as storage space. The flash is so brilliant that both the gunner and the commander need to blink at the moment of firing, otherwise they will be blinded for so long that they won't see the shot hit the target. The muzzle flash spurts out so much flame that, after a shot or two, the hedge or undergrowth in front of the tank is likely to start burning. When moving, the gun's overlaps in the front, if traversed to the side. It is so long that the driver, gunner and commander have to be constantly alert to avoid wrapping the barrel around some distant tree, defenseless lamppost or inoffensive house. The Firefly was outfitted with a Chrysler engine which could produce up to 425 horsepower. This allowed the tank to go up to 40 km an hour. The Firefly also had a secondary armament. This was mainly always to deal with lighter vehicles. The name of these armaments was the M1919 Browning machine gun and the .50 Browning M2 machine gun. The Sherman's armor wasn't necessarily amazing, especially not on the sides. You can also see this for example for the German Panther. The name for this is the all or nothing side, where the front is very thickly armored and the sides are very lightly armored. This is to keep the tank lighter and not waste precious materials. Almost every single tank has this, but one of the exceptions to this rule is the IS-2 tank, which had a thick layer of armor almost everywhere. The thickest point of the Sherman Firefly was 89mm thick and it had an operational range of 193 km. The Sherman Firefly weighed 33 tons and it was produced roughly 2000 times. Now we come to the fun part, service history. The Firefly was ready in numbers and filled the 21st Army Group's Armoured Brigade in 1944 just in time for D-Day. According to one of my followers, the Firefly were positioned on the front of some landing craft to deal with the remaining German fortifications missed by the barrage of the Allies. The Firefly played a very important role in the D-Day landings and the weeks after. This is because the British and the Commonwealth forces had to face up to 70% of the German armor deployed to Normandy. For example, in the Battle of Caen, where the Germans used 8 panzer divisions and 3 heavy tank battalions. The fighting raged on from the 6th of June until the 6th of August 1944. Eventually, the Germans learned to recognize and respect the Firefly, which often became their #1 priority targets in most engagements. This was because they inflicted so much damage. In response, the crews usually painted half their barrel with an effective counter-shading pattern to disguise it as a regular Sherman. And their effectiveness rapidly became legendary. On June 9, 1944, Lieutenant G.K. Henry's Firefly knocked out 5 Panthers from the 12th SS Panzer Division in rapid succession. On June 14th, Sergeant Harris destroyed 5 Panthers around the hamlet of Liegefras, and even one of the most feared German top aces, Michael Whitman, was presumably killed by a Canadian Firefly on August 1944. In total, the 2,000 Fireflies were used in Normandy, northwestern Europe, including the Netherlands, northwest Germany and Italy. My opinion. Take this with a grain of salt, it's just an opinion from someone online, so feel free to disagree with me. If you have any other thoughts, leave them in the comment section down below, and here we go. It was a very decent, reliable tank, which in my opinion is extremely important. The need for a decently armored, good gun tank is extremely important as well, and in my opinion for the time the Firefly sure ticked that box. The Firefly had a main armor which allowed it to tangle with each tank which Germany had fielded at the time. It was also more reliable than the German tanks, which isn't very difficult considering that the Panthers near the end of the war had a roughly 40% reliability rate. It could go up to 40 km an hour, which isn't extremely quick, but it did the job. The Firefly wasn't very heavy, which gave it an advantage over the Panther, which was 13 tons heavier than the Firefly. Now we come to the question, is the Sherman Firefly your favorite Allied tank of World War II? Head on over to my community page to vote in the polls. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please consider leaving a like and subscription and turn on the notifications, and I will see you guys in the next video.